Los Angeles is notorious for its traffic. Not only does the city have a reputation for being heavily congested, it's nearly impossible to navigate without a car. That means being caught in rush hour traffic isn't a choice, it's just an incredibly inconvenient fact of life. It's not just LA across the US. It's clear that cars rule the road. Meanwhile, across the pond in Europe, public transit is a part of daily life for most people. Some cities are even moving away from cars altogether, investing heavily in sleek electric buses and an even more expansive high-speed train network. In this video, we'll learn what makes Europe's public transit so well loved and well used, how American car culture is holding the country back, and the projects that are being built in the US right now that could radically transform how people live and work, from London to Paris. Many European cities have public transit systems that work extremely well by almost every measure. This means that people walk more, bike more, they use metros and trams and buses, all on a regular basis. So what's their secret? A big one has to do with time. European cities are, for the most part, really old. Many existed as urban settlements for centuries prior to the rise of industrialization in the 19th and 20th centuries. So they didn't experience rapid growth in the same way that modern American cities did. People were living and working and getting around in Zurich and Paris long before cars came along. Industrialization also came much earlier to Europe, meaning that many countries began investing in their public transit earlier as well. Starting in the 1760s, many people in Great Britain began flocking to cities in pursuit of factory jobs. Canals were built to ferry goods produced in those factories more cheaply and easily. The construction of railroads came shortly after, allowing products and people to move more freely than ever before. So many tracks were laid in such a short period of time, and so much money was poured into the expansion effort that a period of the 1840s sparked what many called a railway mania. By 1863, the world's first underground railroad opened, forming the foundation of the London Underground. The Industrial Revolution continued to sweep across Europe, pushing more people into cities and facilitating rapid advancements in transportation technology. In 1896, Budapest opened the world's first electric-powered subway, followed shortly by the Paris Metro, which opened its doors during the 1900 World Fair. But then came the car, and with that, big decisions about what the future of European transportation would look like from the start. Europe sustained investment in public transit, and while many countries developed new infrastructure to accommodate cars like the Autobahn in Germany, these roads typically linked cities rather than penetrating them. Countries also worked together to make sure individual systems were well integrated. Officials in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria created an association to boost ridership between countries by standardizing ticketing and fare structures, coordinating schedules, and sharing the funding. By the way, this effort to connect the various systems within cities and between cities really paid off. Take Zurich as an example. Switzerland's largest city, the city system is incredibly well integrated, making it easy to hop from tram to a boat to a train to a bus, all with practically no wait times. All of the systems work together and are built to be incredibly dense. Every citizen in Zurich lives within 1/4 mile of a bus or rail station. Buying a ticket is very easy and can be done at more than 2,000 ticket machines scattered throughout the city and found at local post offices. This is a sharp contrast to the United States of America, where suburbs are often built without much thought given to how they'll be connected to one another. This focus on connectivity really paid off. A 2023 survey by the European Commission found that a whopping 95% of people in Switzerland report feeling satisfied with their public transit system. Zurich also happens to be ranked as one of the happiest cities in the world, which is not difficult to imagine if you can hop on a train outside your house every 5 minutes. It could drop you off at the airport within 10 minutes. But Zurich isn't alone. Throughout the European Union, people report feeling satisfied with their city's public transit offerings, considering it easy to use. Take Eurail, for example. First, introduced in 1959, this complex network of trains connects over 30,000 towns and cities in 33 countries. It allows both EU citizens and non-EU citizens to purchase a single pass to get around, which eliminates the need to buy your multiple passes for different legs of your journey. The EU even launched an initiative that makes it completely free for 18-year-olds so that they can learn more about Europe's culture, heritage, and history. In America, having one train system connecting all major cities is almost unthinkable. The closest analog is the nation's Amtrak system, which runs fairly consistently in the Northeast, but Amtrak rides are expensive and trips across the country can take days, often requiring passengers to take buses for extended legs of the journey. Aside from taking a plane or driving for days, there's no direct route for people traveling between the nation's two biggest cities, New York City and LA. But Europe's biggest cities, Paris and London, are just over 2 hours apart via high-speed rail. Despite being separated by water, the Channel Tunnel, affectionately called the Channel, is actually the longest underwater tunnel in the world. At the time it was built in the 1980s, it was also one of the most expensive infrastructure projects ever, but it has proved invaluable in linking Europe to the United Kingdom and boosting both trade and tourism. And speaking of water travel, ferries are another key feature of European transit. While on the slower side, Europa's ferries provide breathtaking views and are very popular for island hopping in countries like Italy and Greece. Eurail includes many of these lines in their path, but there are also many state-owned ferries, including those in Croatia and the Brittany ferries in northwest France, which are actually owned and operated by local farmers. In 2015, Norway introduced the world's first electric ferry and is currently working to electrify their fleet in a bid to cut emissions and costs. Seeing as American states are mostly adjacent to one another, ferries aren't nearly as common, one exception being Washington State's ferry system, which last year carried nearly 20 million passengers to the region's various islands and peninsulas. For people who aren't interested in taking wheels or ships, many European countries are investing heavily in making their cities more walkable. In Paris, public officials have unveiled the plan to create a 15-minute city where every essential you could ever need lies within short walking distance. Last year, Paris even began to restrict cars from entering the city's busiest, a Honda Small, so that roads could be freed up for more biking, walking, and local traffic. The city's metro also happens to be one of Europe's busiest and densest, ferrying over 1.5 billion people every year. The newer train cars are made using recycled materials, LED lighting, and feature air conditioning for hot summer days. Contrast that to New York City's subway cars, many of which rely on a century-old signal system just to run, and they experience AC outages all too often. Transit systems across the EU are also incredibly safe. One focus of the European Commission has been to standardize safety requirements across all modes of travel. They also set an ambitious Vision Zero initiative that aims to reach zero fatalities by 2050. As part of this effort, cars are now required to have an automated call system installed in case of a crash, and attention warnings in case drivers fall asleep at the wheel or are otherwise distracted. Buses must provide seatbelts for all passengers, and trucks must be equipped with direct vision features like radar to reduce blind spots. Another big push has been to eliminate air pollution and prioritize pedestrian and cyclist traffic through smarter RD design. Europe's railway systems already rank as some of the world's safest. A 2022 E-report even found that major accidents are becoming increasingly rare, and serious accidents continue to decline. Progress like that comes from small innovations stacking up over time. Lines for sponsoring this video. Europe's railway systems rank as some of the world's safest. A 2022 report on railway safety in the EU found that major accidents are becoming increasingly rare, and significant accidents have decreased in recent years. But safety isn't the only consideration taken into account when designing public transit systems. A lot of what makes these systems work comes down to economics. We're all familiar with the idea that money rules the world. In the case of public transit, that holds true. Very few decisions make more of an impact than what governments decide to invest in. In the case of the US, roughly 85% of our transit budget goes toward highways and roads, whereas places like Switzerland and France, over half of their budget is poured into maintaining and expanding passenger trains and mass transit system. Meanwhile, a growing number of European countries and cities are making public transit free to encourage even more ridership. A lot of what makes these systems work comes down to economics. We're all familiar with the idea that money rules the world. In the case of public transit, that holds true. Very few decisions make more of an impact than what governments decide to invest in. In the case of the US, roughly 85% of our transit budget goes toward highways and roads, whereas places like Switzerland and France, over half of their budget is poured into maintaining and expanding passenger trains and mass transit system. Meanwhile, a growing number of European countries and cities are making public transit free to encourage even more ridership. There's also a question of ownership. The railway rights of way in Europe are publicly owned, whereas those in the US are largely owned by a few companies. Those companies, they make more money by shuttling freight than passengers, which means that those freight trips get priority. It also means that US train cars sit lower to the ground and are built wider to accommodate, which slows them down. Lastly, the United States tax code also favors consumption. Saving is basically taxed twice, while many European countries often rely more heavily on tax revenue from the purchase of goods, including personal vehicles. Taken together, these differences in financial priorities start to add up. Considering the lack of investment in public transportation, may come as no surprise that very few people use it. One survey found that today, over 60% of Americans never use public transit. Another found that only 5% of Americans report using public transport for their daily commute. And most of those people are located in a single place: New York City. In fact, the Big Apple is one of the only places in the United States where the majority of its citizens do one-tone. personal vehicles and instead rely on subways or buses to get around. But despite having millions of daily riders, the network as a whole is critically underfunded, and its century-old subway system is in serious need of both maintenance and modernization. However, polling suggests that more Americans, especially younger people, want to spend less time on the road. They want to live in well-connected cities, and some real progress is being made. Respond to these growing demands. Earlier this year, New York City began its first-in-the-nation congestion pricing program, which charges a toll to drivers entering the city during peak travel time. The money generated from this program will then go to fund much-needed upgrades to the city's public transit system, including that century-old subway and many of the buses. In addition to that extra revenue, the program aims to make commutes for people living within the city less congested and more pleasant. Over half a year in, and it's already being touted as a success. Subway ridership is up. Business in previously heavily trafficked areas also up, and lots of money for public transit updates has already been made. Meanwhile, progress on two of the country's first high-speed rail projects is well underway, and both happen to be in California near Los Angeles. LA was one of the first American cities to become dependent on cars, and it's now poised to become a hub of next-generation train travel. Approved by voters back in 2008, the California High-Speed Rail will connect the Los Angeles area to the San Francisco Bay Area in under 3 hours, reaching speeds exceeding 200 miles per hour. A major section of the project is close to entering the track-laying phase, with construction wrapping up later next year as LA waits for rail connection to cities up north. Another project will connect one of LA's suburbs to Las Vegas, and it's already broken ground. It's called Brightline West. This all-electric train system will reach speeds also above 200 miles per hour and shovel people traveling to Vegas in a fraction of the time it takes to drive. This company, which is the only privately owned and operated passenger rail company in the U.S., also recently launched a high-speed train service linking Orlando to Miami and those Washington State ferries from earlier. They recently announced they would be rebuilding their fleet to become hybrid electric by 2040 as a way to reduce emissions and save on fuel. It's easy to see that the United States could learn a lot from Europe's public infrastructure. But perhaps the continent's greatest success story isn't its flashy high-speed trains, but it's incredibly safe and walkable. In the US, crossing the street can feel like a gamble. But in many European cities, crosswalks are a work of art. How is that possible? Click here to find out.